Is that better? So welcome everyone. My name's Peter Molyneux. I'm the chair of Sussex Partnership NHS Foundation Trust. And I suppose nothing quite says autumn like Strictly Come Dancing back on the television and the AGM of Sussex Partnership. So here we are this afternoon. We do have some apologies for absence. We need to send apologies for Gurpreet Panu, Rachel Goldsworthy, Peter Aiken, Ellie Buchanan, Jack Barker, Julie Barker, Catherine Eastland, Mel Smith and Farai Addy. And we also just heard this morning that Keith Johnson, the lead governor, is unwell, so he's unable to join us this morning. In terms of the year that we're celebrating, I wanted to start by acknowledging the formal component of the meeting. So we need to look at and reflect on our annual report and accounts, which I think provide an opportunity for us to think about where we've come from over the last year, what we've achieved on behalf of our patients, families and carers. But also I think it's an opportunity today to bring together people who have a common interest in improving the lives of people seriously affected by mental illness and the lives of people affected by learning disability, and to collectively look forward in terms of how we're going to try and meet the challenges of the year ahead. The challenges for mental health and learning disability services for the NHS as a whole and society at large can feel very daunting and very difficult, and I think we're all very well aware of the kind of wider environment in which the NHS and the Trust is operating. But I think there are grounds for us to be optimistic. I think there are grounds for us to think about what we can do together by making sure we're using all the talents available to us and all the resources available to us so that we can better meet the needs of vulnerable people, that we can help them receive the care that they need, but also do more to prevent people becoming ill in the first place. The focus of our board is on quality improvement. We passionately believe that quality improvement is the right approach to make the changes that we need to make services that are safe, that are more effective, and provide people with a positive experience. We all know there are huge challenges ahead of us, and that the level of complexity that we're dealing is really quite daunting sometimes. Workforce recruitment and retention is a major area of concern. Public finances are under pressure, and we need to make sure that we're making absolutely the best use of all the investment that we're receiving. At the same time, I think it's really important as a large organisation that employs a lot of people and works with a lot of people that we actually mirror and do our best to address some of the issues in wider society, be that this stigma, be that discrimination, be that marginalisation, and be that exclusion. As that large local employer, as an NHS service provider, as a membership organisation, we have a really important part to play in confronting those issues as an employer. And working with our system partners, I think we can make a real difference to people's lives by creating better jobs, by bringing more local people into employment, as well as then making sure that we use their knowledge of what's going on in local communities to both prevent serious mental illness and to better serve people in terms of their care. So we have a really specific and important responsibility to create an environment where people can raise concerns, where they can raise concerns without fear of being silenced, without fear of sanction, or fear of inaction. Yes, we have a duty to listen, but we also have a duty to act, and we have a duty to respond. And I think that co-production that then is at the heart of finding the right solutions is something we really, really want to continue to do and to continue to improve. Our values are really important to us as individuals, as a trust, and as a system. They're reflected in our day-to-day behaviours, in our decision-making and our ways of working. But we really value being held to account by our governors and our members to make sure that, yes, we believe that we're following our values, but that actually you can see that we're following our values. There's no point denying the wicked challenges that we face. There's no need to hide away, if you like, from some of those really big challenges. But I think today is also an opportunity just to recognise how much we do achieve together as a system, as an NHS and as a trust, to acknowledge how much actually works well and how much people do appreciate what we do, and to celebrate success. And we've got some examples of those successes this morning. So I think that's an equally important part of today. I really thank you all for joining us this morning. I'm looking forward to hearing about the presentations from the Chief Exec and the Chief Finance Officer, and about some of the work we're doing across the Trust. And I'm looking forward to the wider conversation with all of you. So I just quickly need to move now into some of the formal business. We need to approve the minutes of the annual general meeting held on the 15th of August. So anyone who can remember those, if they could, they're happy to agree those. It appears that we are. And having done that, I'm now going to invite Jane Padmore, the Chief Exec, and Usman Niazi, the Chief Finance Officer, to do a review of the year.
Have to excuse me, I'm not used to wearing heels. I nearly went flying. So sorry about that. So thank you everyone for coming. I need to work out how to use this. Someone might need to help me because it's not turning. Could you? Oh, got it. Right. So I'm here and I'm going to be reviewing the year of 2022 to 23. I'm Jane Padmore and I'm the Chief Executive. I joined the Trust in August 2021 and became the Chief Executive in April last year. So right at the beginning of this year that we're talking about. And I want to start by just confirming what our vision and our mission and our vision is, because it's what attracted me to this trust. Our vision is to champion the rights of people with mental health and learning disabilities, and I'd also add those that are neurodiverse in there as well. And that's really important to me, that sense of social justice, that we're here to really champion people and come alongside them and work with them. And that we'll work with our partners, and our partners are patients, they're carers, they're our partners in the ICB, the partners in the local authority, partners in housing, partners of the police. There's a whole range, and the voluntary sector of partners that we work with. And our vision is to improve the quality of life for the communities we serve. And I think we are public servants and we're here to serve the public. And what I really liked about the vision when I was doing my due diligence about the trust, it wasn't we are going to improve the quality of the life of the people that come through our door. It was about the community, and it was about the population of Sussex and the children in Hampshire. And I'm going the wrong way, sorry. And as Peter said, it's underpinned by our values, and our values are what drive us and what's really important. We cover a large patch. We cover East Sussex, West Sussex, Brighton, Hove and Hampshire for children and adolescents. So a very large patch with a lot of staff and a lot of teams, and we do a really diverse range of services. And I think what's important to acknowledge over this year, that we've had some fantastic non-executive directors join us on the board, and that they have offered the longer serving non-exec directors and the newer executive directors provide challenge to us as an executive team and help us to strive for high quality services. And then we've had, for those of you that have been around Sussex Partnership for a long time, you'll see a lot of new faces on here. So the executive team has, over the last year, has really, we've appointed a lot of new people, a lot of, because of people leaving due to retirement or going on to other jobs. So we have had a number of people join us, and that's our current executive team. We're now fully recruited to, which is a delight. When I went for the job, I was asked what my 3 priorities were, as most people are in their jobs. And I said my first was quality. So my first priority is always, and it always has been, quality. And when I say quality, I mean purposeful quality. So the quality improvement that Peter was talking about. Sorry if this is echoing, I can't seem to get it in the right position. But it's driven by proper quality planning and quality controls and then quality improvement. But it's quality is safety, effectiveness and experience. So that being at the forefront of everything that we're doing, driving forward quality. And the second was about our staff and workforce. And I thought it'd be very easy to say recruitment and retention because I think that's what most people say. But actually I wanted to create a trust where people could have fulfilling careers, because I think people come into the health service and come into mental health and learning disability services because they want to make a difference. And I think if they're making a difference, then they have a fulfilling career, more likely to stay and more likely to be attracted to work for us. And then the other was about partnership. And what's really important to me was that integration, that we have a duty to collaborate across the system. We are no longer just SBFT. We are part of a system. We're part of the integrated care system in Sussex. And that fundamentally was so important to me. One of my jobs as I was coming up through the ranks was in youth offending services, which was an integrated service with police, probation, health, education, social care. And it was a way of working that I just really bought into and could really see the benefit of, working together and not being protectionist of our own barriers. And so I wanted to come to a trust where that was at the forefront of what we were doing. So I came into the job and we had the breakthrough objectives. I think what's important to note about the breakthrough objectives is that they're meant to be stretch. They're not do what you're meant to do. They're doing the additional, really stretch you. So I would never expect to be completely green on breakthrough objectives, because then I'd argue that you haven't stretched yourself enough. So please bear that in mind as I go through. Oh, wrong way again, sorry. So the first was around people. And one of the first priorities we put was a really tricky one, because it's tricky to measure, but it's also a very emotive subject. And that was our aim to reduce the unexpected death through suspected suicide by at least 10%. We, of course, are aspiring towards no suicides at all, that nobody will ever feel that suicide is their only option. But we're not going to achieve that overnight. And if we don't set something as a purposeful objective, then we'll never get there. And so we achieved that, which was really brilliant. And this first people one was all around safety. Having the right staff is really important for safety as well. And you'll see that we made tracks and we made progress, but we didn't quite get to the target that we hoped of 400 whole-time equivalents. We're back on target this year, thankfully. And then, I can't see very well, sorry. We also asked staff around the staff survey about the safety domains, and we wanted to get above average. We improved, but we didn't get above average, so it's really important we continue on that journey of improving culture of safety. The next was around partnership. I think one of the things that we really wanted to do was make sure that people, if they were cared for in hospital, they were close to home so that they could stay in touch with their local community. And we had people as far away as Scotland at times in beds. And so we worked towards bringing that down so that even if they were not in an SPFT bed, that they were cared for in Sussex. And we thankfully achieved that. The other two objectives we didn't achieve, and it's an area that I think we found as an executive team and a board really disappointing, and something that's really focused our energy for this year. So about embracing change, being an organisation, being seen as an organisation that embraces change and is willing to think innovatively and differently and think outside the box. And I hope that our system partners and our patients have started to see that change. And the other was around the community mental health survey, and we had some really disappointing results. And I do think it's important to say here that we were really disappointed in the results, and we had to do some hard thinking and hard reflection about that, what that meant and how we would improve. Then we looked at prevention, and this was really about patients' experience. And sadly, we haven't been able to do what we need to do in the people that have been waiting for care for over 52 weeks. The need for our services is growing year on year, and within that, there is a huge cohort of people with potential neurodiversity assessments needed that aren't getting the service they need, and we're part of a wider piece of work in the integrated care system, looking at different ways of achieving improving that situation. We had some great success in our rehabilitation pathway, and we wanted to expand the offer so that people were able to be treated in the rehab pathway more. And that's about being integrated more into the community, being close to home, being engaged in work, having housing, and we thankfully achieved that. And finally, our community survey, our support and wellbeing offer, that showed an improvement, but again, we're not quite at average yet. So we want to be above average. We've got to get to average first. So I thought I'd talk about some of the key things that we did over the year, and transforming services, particularly our mental health urgent care pathway, has been really important, and we started that journey last financial year, and we're continuing it into this year, and we're looking at what we can do more upstream so that we're not creating further problems further on down the pathway. So we would aim that fewer people need to be in hospital, fewer people are waiting for beds in the emergency departments or at home, that people are being cared for in the most appropriate setting at the most appropriate time. And then we had our staff survey results, and 50% of our staff completed the form. And I'd say we were about average. Some were slightly over average, some were slightly below average, but we were about average. And then some of our big achievements over the year, and one that I'm really proud of, is Spring Tide, which opened in October 2022, and it's the first of its kind in Sussex, and it's an alternative for inpatient care for people who have an eating disorders, and it's a family and young person treatment offer. So they come in as a family into the day unit, and they have a whole raft of therapeutic options available to them, and it's very centred around the person. IROC is a 14 to 25-year-old service. We're now at 5. We've got 7 sites planned. We're now at 5. And this is offering face-to-face and virtual appointments for people, and has been really well received. Our Recovery College has just celebrates its 10th anniversary in East Sussex, has delivered a phenomenal amount of courses to people from across the community, including service users and carers. And we've had 1,200 courses run and 10,000 enrolments. Our community transformation, we've really got underway with that and really seen some tangible improvements in what we're offering in the community. We've still got some way to go, and I think we've got to always learn as we're moving forward. Our provider collaboratives, so we are provider collaborative for a number of areas of work, and this is where we do the specialist commissioning across parts of the region. And that's meant that we're improving inpatient care, not just for the beds in Sussex, but also when people are cared for outside of Sussex in specialist placements. And then Shout, our free crisis text message service, which now has 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week help from trained volunteers, and has expanded our mental health offer. And I've touched on our rehab pathway, and one of the strengths of our rehab pathway is that it's been co-produced, which I think is something that we're really on a journey with and really excited to be taking forward. I think our priorities for the coming year, and I think it's important to put this here, is to achieve and maintain consistent quality of care, getting the fundamentals right. I think that's really important. We can talk about lots of big innovative ideas, but unless we get the fundamentals right, then I think we're lost. So really drilling down and getting the fundamentals right for safety, experience and effectiveness. We're redesigning our pathways, and our priorities are urgent and emergency care and CAMS. Listening to patients and families, but doing more than listening. I think we've done a lot of listening, but actually we need to co-produce. We need to move beyond listening. That doesn't mean you don't listen. It means you you listen with, and you do with, and you co-produce with. So I think it's moving to a different space with co-production. And I think we've got a lot to learn in that area. And we've just appointed a director of experience to really support us on that journey. Create an environment where people feel safe to raise concerns. And this has been a huge area of work in the Trust over the last year. And I think it's an area that nationally, with the Let Be inquiry and all sorts of things, that's becoming far more prevalent, and people are thinking about a lot more. And I think as an executive team and a board, we've had to reflect hard on how do we make it that we're listening to the voice of the minority, the silent minority as well as the vocal majority. So really thinking about how we hear voices we don't normally hear where people are concerned. We've got new divisional structures that have just been launched that we consulted on last year, and then we're building on the work with system partners. So we're doing some really good work with the voluntary sector, and we are really committed to working with the voluntary sector in a different way. And that means putting our money where our mouth is. It means working in different ways and having an agreement, a signed up agreement with how we do that. And contributing to the development of the ICS. I think the last year has really seen a sea change in how the system is working. As chief executives, we meet at least once a week as a minimum, formally, and then we meet informally as well. And I think it's breaking down old institutional barriers and silos so that we are working in a different way as a system, thinking about the population, not just thinking about our own bottom line and our own way of working. That might mean us taking on risk that traditionally has sat elsewhere in the system, because we've got to do that risk share together. And I think we're in a much better place as a result of the work that we did last year to take that forward into the coming year. And certainly as Chief Executive, I'm absolutely committed to thinking about how we improve health as a whole for the system in Sussex, not just for the people that we see. The other exciting thing to look ahead to is Rises, which is our new 24 bedded, 54 bedded hospital in Bexhill, and building work starts this November. This is a really exciting opportunity for us to co-produce the environment and really think about what is the best possible environment for people when they have to come into hospital, how they spend the shortest amount of time there, because the environment is so good, it doesn't exacerbate their mental health problem or mean that they're overstimulated because they're neurodiverse. So we're really thinking differently as we build this hospital. And I feel really excited that we could really do something radically different here. And then finally, our trust organisational strategy runs till March 25. I know that sounds a long time ago, but I think if we're going to have a really meaningful co-produced strategy to launch in April 2025, we have to start now. It's no good waiting till 6 months before and suddenly thinking, oh gosh, we've got a strategy we have to launch. So Colin is very kindly leading that work for us, who's sitting down there, and we're going to really start co-producing, listening to people and thinking about, so what are our core values for the next 5 years? What is our vision? What is our mission? How are we contributing to the shared delivery plan and the vision for NHS Sussex that's been set out by NHS Sussex? How does our strategy sit alongside that and complement it? And how do we meet the needs of the local population as a whole? So really thinking, so we want you all involved in that as we go forward, because it'll only be meaningful co-produced if people engage with it and we actually proactively go about that. So that's a really exciting bit of work for the next year and a half. Now I have the pleasure of handing over to Usman, who's my Deputy Chief Executive and Chief Finance Officer, who is going to go through the accounts of the last year.
Lights up here. Good morning, everybody. Unlike the boss, I will require my laptop and a bit of paper to talk you through this next bit. There we go. I'm not going to go through all the stuff that's on the slides. You'll be able to read through all the very interesting but slightly dry numbers that are in the tables. I guess I was just going to take a bit of what happened last year from a sort of financial perspective. So we started the year with a plan to have a break-even position, so break-even plan, and I think it was fair to say that was always going to be a challenge. So in order to deliver that, we would have had to have delivered £15 million worth of savings. And as it ended up, we ended the year delivering £7 million worth of savings. So we were about £8 million short on our savings programme. So that was for a whole set of reasons, which I'll talk through briefly in a moment now. We'll talk about all the work that we've continued to do. But we actually ended the year with a £2.2 million deficit set out in the plan. And my colleague from KPMG, Amy, is here, and she'll just briefly talk you through sort of the audit bits and all the sort of governance and assurance pieces. But I think it's important to reflect on, even though we were short on our original savings programme, we ended the year with a £2.2 million deficit, which is a lot better than where we expected to be halfway through that year. And I think the first thing we should recognise is we did some really close working with our ICB and ICS colleagues and partners. That I think last year we identified early on that we were in a really difficult position because of the operational challenges we faced, because of the demands that the teams were seeing, and some of our operational colleagues here can attest to the level of demand that they have been dealing with. And actually we worked really closely with the ICB, who I think it's worth saying committed to the MIS, and actually then provided us with additional funding as well to make sure that we ended the year in as not a bad position as we could have ended up with. It's always easy to talk about finance from sort of a numbers point of view and all the tables, but actually what sits behind that was all of the work that was done to improve our position over the course of that year. So many of you will remember at one point last year, we were using over 100 independent sector beds, many of them out of county. We all know that that doesn't always provide the best care for our patients. It doesn't always give us the best outcomes we want. And actually, John and the operational teams, working with the clinical colleagues, did an enormous amount of work to be able to reduce that number down during the course of the year. And we actually ended the year with about 50. And it was a really significant sort of change piece of work that got carried out. It translated into also a reduction in the amount of money we spent, which is always good. But I think there's an important thing there, which is if we try and do the right thing, by and large, it will also be the best value option for us. And that's one of the key things that we've tried to take into this year. As ever, and lots of people will have heard about it, we did lots of work around our agency usage. I think it's fair to say everyone recognises we have a high agency usage. We started a lot of work last year. That didn't necessarily give us the financial benefits last year, but that has started to come through this year in terms of really understanding where we use those staff, how we use them, making sure we get good value. But one of the things we did was also start to implement the rostering system. And I think that started to show some real improvements in terms of how do we make sure we're getting people in the right place at the right time, where we need them, and we have proper control and oversight of all of that. So I guess without going through all the tables, we ended the year with a £2.2 million deficit, which was not ideal, but much better than where we expected to be. That was built on the back of a significant amount of operational work in terms of the out-of-area replacements, the reductions that we saw in the agency usage, and our work with ICB and system partners. Despite all of those challenges, though, I think it's important to highlight we did still make a lot of investments, and we achieved a lot of things. So we continued to invest the mental health and standard money. We made real progress across the IAPT investments, with the rolling out of the new systems. We continued to invest in the mental health investment in schools program, and we've continued to roll that out, which has been an important, I think, thing to recognise. Hopefully, some of you will have been to visit the Spring Tide service. We invested a significant amount of money, both capital and revenue, within the new Spring Tide service, which has gone live, and I think that eating disorder day service has been a great success and a sign of how we'd like to do things going forward. We also invested in community rehab, and our blue light triage services. So I think it's important to recognise that when we do have to make savings, we don't just make savings for the sake of it. We're making them so that we can use that money to invest within those core services that deliver the priority that Jane's been talking about, has been setting out for last year. As well as all of the revenue investments we made, we also spent £24 million of capital funds, which I think it's worth noting was the most capital spend the Trust has ever made, and a real testament to the work from both all our own teams, but also our external partners and all the teams that we work with in order to get that done. It was a challenge. It was a big program for the Trust, and I think, fingers crossed, the Rises program is almost over the line, and we spent a significant amount on that. And while we talk about that quite a lot, I think it's worth highlighting that we also spent significant amounts of money refurbishing places of safety. We spent a lot of money, as I said, on our Spring Tides eating disorder service. We refurbished a significant number of wards, including Caburn at Millview, began a refurbishment program at Langley Green. So despite, I think, sometimes you will always hear me talking about some of the challenges that we have to address, I think it's worth reflecting that actually we do also achieve a lot of things through the investments that we make, and we can only do that because of sort of that control and the effort and focus that all of us have put into managing the money. To just cover off some of the very specifics, you'll see up on the slide our income and expenditure position. I think it's worth highlighting that the Trust's income grew from last year. So we ended the year with £523 million of income. That was actually 20% more almost than the previous year. And that is a reflection of both the continuing investment through the Mental Health Investment Standard and growth funding, but also significant increase in the provider collaboratives, of which we manage on behalf of all of our partners. And we continue to work with colleagues to make sure that we get the best value out of those contracts. That then talks through where we're spending our money in terms of our expenditure side. I don't think there's a huge amount here to say other than the biggest element clearly for us is pay, and it's our staff. And so I think it's right that we spend more of our time thinking about how do we recruit staff, how do we retain them, and ultimately how do we help reduce what is still quite a high agency bill and one of the key drivers of our current position. So I will stop there in terms of a review of our position. Those are the capital investments that we made. In terms of the audit, so I'm happy to say we had a very good audit, unqualified, which is clean, a good opinion. But Amy from KPMG is just going to come up here for a moment and just talk you through briefly of the audit process and their findings. So you can take her word for it rather than mine.
Hi everyone, so I'm Amy, I'm the audit manager from the KPMG external audit team. I'm just going to briefly cover the things that we look at as the audit, external auditors, and what the opinions mean. So the first thing we look at is the financial statements audit, and this covers our assessment of whether the accounts provide a true and fair view of the Trust performance in the year. We apply a materiality threshold, which is a level at which we think any errors or differences above that amount would impact the users of the accounts. As part of this, we do look at areas of judgment and consider whether they are appropriate. For Sussex, that's primarily the valuation of land and buildings. We did issue an unqualified opinion on the financial statements, which confirms that they provide a true and fair view. We also issued an unmodified opinion on the annual report, which means that it's consistent with our knowledge of the Trust, it gives a balanced view, and the specific areas within that which are subject to audit didn't contain any reportable misstatements. The second thing we look at then is value for money. So this is whether the Trust's arrangements for achieving value for money are in line with those we would expect to see in the sector. We set out a commentary on that in our auditor's annual report, which is published online, and we didn't identify any significant risks or any significant weaknesses in the arrangements in place at the Trust. And that's really all I was going to say on that one. Brilliant.
Okay, I think we have got to the end of the review of the financial position for the year, and I think I'm handing back to Peter.
Thank you very much, Usman. I always think that that's one of the key challenges of the year, is how do you get that into 20 minutes? So well done for doing that and to making that really, really clear. Can we just formally approve the accounts, please? It appears that we can. Thank you very much, everyone. And so now we're going to talk a bit. Yes. Thank you. There's always one, isn't there? So now we said we would talk about some of the work we're doing, and I'm really delighted that we've got with us this morning some members of the team from Home First. Home First is an absolutely fantastic project, but I'm going to invite Gemma to come up and tell you about it. And, there's a few, sorry, okay, well. Do you want to introduce yourselves and then introduce the project? Is that all right? Great.
Yeah,
thanks, Teresa.
great. Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Teresa Blunt. I'm Professional Lead Occupational Therapist for East Sussex, and I have my colleagues here with me today, which are Gemma Dora, who is Professional Lead Occupational Therapist for West Sussex, and Evelyn Asiak, and also Ali Fleming, who are our senior OTs working in the Home First project. Have we got our slides there? Okay, there we go. So Home First is something we're going to talk about today. It's occupational therapy innovation that we have been running for the past few years. And over the next 15 minutes, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what Home First occupational therapy is, how it's being employed across our acute wards, share some of the impact that it's made for our service users, their families, and also our services, how we've shared our learning, and then what we're going to be doing next. But a little bit of background, first of all, about occupational therapy. We're one of the 14 allied health professionals. That's alongside other professions like physiotherapy or speech and language therapy. We're dual trained to work with both physical and mental health needs. And that's been particularly important for the Home First project because it's meant we've been able to problem solve and expedite safe discharges and help people on their recovery journey. And we use occupation, and when I say occupation, that's really about the activities of daily living people might need to do every day in their lives. There's approximately 250 occupational therapists that work across Sussex Partnership, and we're a key part of the multidisciplinary team in delivering the NHS long-term plan, community transformation, and supporting patient flow. So what exactly is Home First? Home First is a transitional discharge model, and we support patient flow. So we will see a patient from the point that they're admitted into an acute inpatient ward, and then we can follow them up for up to 6 weeks post-discharge. And we offer occupational therapy intervention that will support this earlier or safer discharge. Home First is a model that's been well established in acute physical trusts for some time, but it hadn't really been used in mental health. So this was a real innovation opportunity. And back in 2019 to 2020, we managed to secure some winter funding to start a pilot project to trial Home First. What Home First actually wants to do is ensure no one spends longer than they need in an acute hospital bed. And that's not just for economic reasons and because of the bed pressures. It's actually because we know that every time a person spends a day longer in a hospital bed than they need to, it's a day out of their life when they could be achieving their fullest potential. And we particularly know on our later life wards, the evidence shows that delays in discharge can cause deconditioning. And deconditioning is when people kind of lose muscle strength, perhaps have increased confusion because they've been in hospital too long, perhaps they are at more risk of falls, Perhaps they are more prone to get a hospital-acquired infection. So obviously we want people to come out of hospital as quickly as possible for those reasons. And also we know that they can get de-skilled if they stay in hospital too long because they're out of their usual routines and roles. So what are the Home First interventions? We actually work with individuals to help them re-establish their daily living skills and their routines. We help make sure that if their care packages are needed, that we make sure that these are implemented at the right time and actually meet the needs of people by liaising with the home care providers about what people might actually need and making recommendations. We can give ongoing occupational therapy assessment and intervention, and this might include equipment provision or the provision of telecare. We support re-establishment of community networks, so helping people re-establish with social networks, their hobbies, their interests. And this is because we know that not only does this give value to their work, to their lives, but also if we can maintain their well-being, they're less likely to get readmitted back into hospital. We can identify care needs and any barriers to independent living, and we work very collaboratively with social workers, lead practitioners, primary care, third sector partners. And of course, we work with our carers to support discharge because we know that period between leaving hospital and being home initially can be quite scary for our carers who are supporting individuals, but also that transitional period is quite a vulnerable time for our service users. Home First is designed for patients initially on our later life wards, generally people 65 years and over, but if we do have people on the ward that's younger than that and they meet the criteria for Home First, they will of course be able to access the service. We tend to prioritise people returning to their own home with no existing or very few support networks, and generally they have had coexisting physical healthcare needs. They tend to have difficulties with their activities of daily living and perhaps a history or at risk of self-neglect. We will also work with people living in residential or nursing homes if there's challenges to them returning to that environment or perhaps they're at risk of falls. I'm now going to pass you over to my colleague Gemma, who's going to talk about the evaluation of the project.
Thanks, Teresa. So obviously it's been really important to us to know, does it make a difference? What's the impact? So across the last 2 years, we've collected a wide range of different data that you can see on that slide there, and I'm going to talk about each of these in a bit more detail now over the next few slides. So firstly, demographics. Are we working with the people that we set out to? And the good news is, yes, we are. So the age range, as you can see, of people we're working with was 50 to 92, but the majority of those people are aged between 75 and 79, which is what we were expecting and setting out to do. We've got an even split of men and women accessing Home First. And in terms of ethnicity, the majority of our service users were white British. At the moment, that reflects the wider makeup of the wards, our later life wards, but we're obviously going to keep an eye on this. In terms of health conditions, service users accessing Home First had a wide range of mental health experiences. It didn't focus on one diagnosis, and that's really important to us and really demonstrates that this is an individualised, person-centred model. The majority of service users also had physical health conditions. And again, that really kind of reflects the complexity of needs that people using this service had. Particularly, those are issues that can really impact on discharge. In terms of living situation, just under half of service users were living alone, 32% were living with others, and the rest of people had some kind of social care support or were in residential accommodation. So it's really been important to us to look at the clinical outcomes that Home First has had. So has it made a difference to people? And the good news again is, yes, it has. So 2/3 of people receiving Home First showed an improvement in their, significant improvement in their quality of life at the end of the intervention. But really excitingly to us as occupational therapists, 3/4 of service users receiving the intervention also showed an improvement in what we call occupational functioning, so their ability to do the activities of daily living that are really important to them. We also wanted to know what was the wider system impact of Home First. So across the 2 years, we've had 136 service users have accessed the service. And we've used similar methodology to other transitional discharge models, such as Discharge to Assess, to look at the potential bed days saved by people using the service. And we found that we can save up to 34 bed days per person. And that's particularly relevant when we're talking about those people with the most complex physical and social care needs, and where we might be, for example, bridging for a social care package, which Evelyn will talk about a bit later in a case study. We've also looked at readmission rates for those receiving Home First, and we've found that we've consistently had much lower readmission rates for the people who've received Home First in comparison to those without. It's half the readmission rates. So we're doing some work at the moment to look at the cost implications of that as well. But it's not just about the data. We also want to know what have service users' experience been of Home First. And as you can see here, unequivocally, the service user evaluation and carer evaluation has been incredibly positive. Importantly to us, people have felt supported and valued and empowered as a result of receiving the Home First intervention. But data's really important, but we know it's nothing without narrative. And so here we've been collecting some examples of what people have actually said has been their experience of Home First. And I really want to draw your attention in particular to the quote on the right, where the carer's talking about being given the strength and confidence to carry on when they felt unable to manage. I think this really highlights the risk around carer burnout and the impact that providing carer support can have in supporting a safe and timely discharge. But we also wanted to know what difference did it make to the staff in the teams that we were working with and supporting. And you've got 2 examples of feedback that we've received here from a psychiatrist and from one of our lead practitioners in a community mental health team. But I think that what this really highlights is Home First isn't just about our acute mental health services. It spans across and impacts on our community teams in a supportive way, in the way that we would expect an innovative and transformational model to do. So I said that narrative's really important, so I want to hand over to Evelyn now to share a case study.
Thank you, Gerald. So our case study is about a 68-year-old lady with the diagnosis of schizophrenia and multiple physical health conditions. She was referred to us by the ward MDT and due to frequent readmissions. Now, our assessments included a functional assessment which highlighted the need for a package of care to be put in place on discharge. This recommendation was passed on to the social worker to arrange a package of care. Unfortunately, due to the demand and the lengthy waiting list in adult social care, it was not possible to put this, to source a package of care at the time when Mrs. A was medically fit for discharge. So the Home First team had to bridge that gap between hospital discharge and the start of the package of care, which lasted for a period of 6 weeks. A home assessment was also completed, which highlighted the need for adaptations to be made to enable Mrs. A function independently and safely in her home environment. The home, however, unfortunately, the home environment did not support some of these changes and would have been detrimental to our ability to function safely in the accommodation. This was discussed with Mrs. A and her family, and they all agreed that a suitable property would be beneficial. Fortunately, a suitable property was found to move this family into by the family themselves within the period of our input. Other Home First interventions completed with Mrs. A included graded mobility practice due to decline in her mobility, reintegration into the community in terms of accessing shops and engaging in activity which she enjoyed to participate in the community. At the end of our involvement, we made a referral to the community well-being team for continuity of care, and she continues to be supported by that package of care, which provides the services that we started with her. Mrs. A continues to live well and has remained in the community till today. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to my colleague, Ali, to speak about the adult pilot.
Thanks, Evelyn. It's always good to have a case study to highlight the wonderful work that Home First does, boots on the ground. So based on the success of the Later Life Home First, the Home First Working Age Adult Pilot started on Regency Ward at Millview Hospital in October 2022. It ran for 8 months and comprised of a Band 6 occupational therapist, myself, Ali Fleming, and a Band 3 occupational therapy assistant, Will Lawrenson. It was based on the established Home First Later Life model with the goal to support earlier, safer and more sustainable discharges. During our time on Regency Ward, Home First supported 13 discharges with an average of 30 bed days saved per service user. Along with service users, we work very closely with family members, support workers, community mental health teams, and other support services such as the Discharge to Assess model, and we received very high satisfaction levels in the feedback. Myself and Will are now working on the 12-month working age adult pilot on Jade Ward at Langley Green Hospital, and we hope to make the same positive impact that we had at Millview Hospital. Thank you.
So finally, on the last slide, how have we been sharing our learning? Well, we've been fortunate enough to have Amanda Pritchard from the Chief Executive from NHS England come and visit us at Langley Green and speak and spend time with Home First team. We have presented at the Occupational Therapy Show. We have had 2 publications about our work, and we continue to use the broken record technique where we use every available opportunity, even coming here to your AGM to talk about Home First. Last year, we were also fortunate enough to win at the Positive Practice Awards, an award for innovation, so we're very grateful for that. And our next steps are now just to complete our adult pilot and see what the data shows around that, and continue to work on our business case for rolling out Home First across our later life wards across the Trust. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So can I just a quick round of applause to Gemma, to Teresa, Anna, and Evelyn. And that's a really good example of something that's actually better for patients and better for the use of resource, which is, after all, what we're trying to achieve. As I said earlier, unfortunately, the lead governor, Keith, is unwell today, so I'm just going to very quickly show the slides that he was planning to show. That's going the wrong way this morning. And I mean, we really appreciate the work that our Council of Governors does. And I think particularly in a mental health trust, in a learning disability trust, I think the Council of Governors has a really important role in holding us to our values and also making sure that our view of quality is something that they recognise. And I think they can be really, really helpful. And the work that the governors have done this year has been really important around really trying to understand what's going on with waiting times, understanding what people being out of area actually means, what is going on for our children and young people, and how can we bring more local people into our workforce and make sure that once they're in our workforce that they thrive within our workforce. So I think we're blessed with our Council of Governors, and I think that they do fulfill an important governance function, and they fulfill an important, if you like, statutory function, and they do that really, really well, and hopefully they feel well supported by the Trust when they do that. But also I think that they have really managed to keep a real focus on quality and safety and what is their experience on the ground, what are their constituents telling them, and how can we make sure that that's feeding into our understanding. Clearly, as we move towards the end of the year, they'll be very actively engaged in the appointment of a new and hopefully better Trust chair from April 2024. They've been very actively involved in the appointment of new non-execs, and I think we've been really fortunate with some of the new non-execs we've been able to attract. But they've also, I think, post-pandemic, enabled us to think again about what does membership mean and how do we make sure we've got an active membership, particularly given the population that we serve and the importance of actually looking at quality and safety through an equity lens. I suspect if Keith had been able to be here today, he would have said a little bit more, but just as the chair of the council, those were the headlines that I wanted to share with you. So that is the sort of end of the formal business of the AGM, but part of the AGM is to see if there are any questions from members, particularly from governors or members of the public who are here today, and whether there are any issues that people want to draw to the board and the organisation's attention. So I don't know, before I fall over this microphone stand, if there's anything anyone wanted to raise. I can see a few hands raised. I will get round you all. Hilary, do you want to go to this gentleman first?
My experience and that of people I know with autism support services is rather variable. This is obviously partly because of staff retention and things like that and staff moving around, but we do seem to lack a single point of access which parents, sufferers, professionals, including the police and social services, can get to the right people by being routed. Now, is this something we should consider as SVA, single point of access, for people, including teachers, parents, etc.?
I mean, I know this is something that has been actively discussed. Teresa, is it worth just asking you to respond on where we are at the moment?
I'm being taught how to hold the microphones. That's really helpful. First of all, thank you for your
Sorry,
question.
Teresa, do you want to just introduce your...
Of course, sorry.
Yeah.
So, sorry, everybody. So I'm Teresa Barker. I'm the Chief Nursing Officer. Started working with the organisation in January of this year. It's really good to be here and to meet so many new people as well today. Thank you for your question. And I'll look forward to having more conversation with you also later about this, because I think it's really complex. And as Jane said earlier, can I just ask you to move to the side here? Thank you. So as Jane said earlier, this is one of our absolute priorities for this year, which is about looking at how we meet the needs of people that require a neurodiversity assessment and potential treatment. We have a piece of work planned. I'm looking to Jane because she may need to tell us a bit more about that, but we have a piece of work planned, and one of our colleagues, Claire, is going to be supporting us in working with system partners to be able to work as part of this project across the ICS. Jane, is there anything you wanted to add?
So, personally, it's an area I'm particularly personally interested in. I have a son who's autistic, so it's something I am absolutely passionate about. And as you see, when I talked about the vision and the mission, I said, and neurodiversity, because I think it is something. I have to recognise that it's an area that is only just being known about. So I think I've been working in the field of mental health since 1990, and I think it's something that has become more, people know more about it and more awareness of it, but the services haven't caught up with that. So it's something that I'm committed to having inbuilt through all of our care pathways and having consistency of practice. So over the last year, we're talking about the last year, we've introduced autism training into our inpatient services so that the staff understand the needs and the sensory needs of people who are neurodiverse when they're admitted to our wards. When we're looking at our new build, we're looking at the sensory levels on the ward. So there's a whole raft of work alongside the work that Teresa's talking about. But if you want to engage in that work, then let us know and we'd be happy to bring you on that journey. Yeah, lovely. Well, I'll tell you what, if you want to be part of this journey with us, then more than welcome.
Fantastic. There's a lady at the back. Yeah.
Thank you. Sarah Payne, Local Authority Governor for West Sussex County Council. In view of our values, which we discussed earlier, I really would like us to have a meaningful discussion about governors being given the opportunity to participate in a way that works for them. I'm talking about online meetings. I think it's time that we give governors the option of meeting face-to-face. Hybrid meetings could be an option which work for many organisations and give people the opportunity who don't feel happy to come and meet face-to-face, but also give people the opportunity to participate in a meaningful way that do want to meet face-to-face. I know that you're aware of those issues, Peter, and also the chairman, Keith, is as well. But I went to a recent Governor Development Workshop up in the Oval, and I spoke to several NHS trusts, and we were the only NHS trust that I spoke to that weren't meeting face-to-face. So I really do think it's time for us to do this, and I think we will find more engagement, better decisions, and it will be better for everybody. So I really would like us to raise the priority of that and have a proper discussion about it, please.
I'm really, really happy to have that discussion. Actually, the attendance at Council of Governors meetings went up when we went online. So I think if we're going to go back face-to-face, it does need to be a conversation about where we hold that, what time of day we hold that, and how we enable it. And as you say, it may be a hybrid model. It may be a mixture of some and some, but it is something that Keith, the lead governor, and I have been talking about. Really happy to bring that to the next. We have a Council of Governors meeting coming up, so we could bring it to that meeting. Really happy to do that. There was a gentleman in the middle. Do you still have a? Yeah.
Is our finance director raised made a comment about 100 people being counted. Is that the county right? First, to ask
Sorry, you need to. I know I'm not always the best example, but you need to hold the microphone a bit nearer to you because we got half of it. I'm really sorry.
Right, is that better?
Yes, thank you.
The question I'm asking is about our finance director who raised the issue of 100 beds which are being currently used. Is this correct for the Royal Sussex County Hospital? The patients are there, is that correct?
I think what I'll do is I'll ask Usman just to clarify what he did say, and then we can see if there's a follow-up question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So just in case I cause any confusion, so at our peak point last year, the Trust was using 100 independent sector beds across the county, but also out of county. So it was 100 in total, not all in Brighton and not related to the county hospital site, part of UHSX. So apologies for any confusion. When I mean county, I meant out of Sussex. So of the 100 in total independent sector beds, at our peak point, we were using, I think, almost 40 that were out of the county of Sussex. In effect. So what we would refer to as inappropriate out-of-area admissions. Does that clarify the question?
Okay.
Or clarify? Yeah.
Okay, Teresa, do you want to follow up? Thanks, Usman.
Thank you. Thanks, Stuart, for your question. So just as Usman said, the 100 beds was 100 extra mental health acute beds that we were using across the independent sector, in addition to the beds that we have here within Sussex Partnership Trust. We've reduced that by year end to about 50 beds, so that's great because that means that 50 people that would have originally been cared for in independent sector beds are now being cared for within Sussex. And our ambition is that everybody that is a Sussex resident has their care delivered in Sussex by Sussex Partnership Trust. So the improvement is that we had been using an additional 100, and by the year end we were using an additional 50. And as I stand here today, that number's reduced to about 38. Okay.
Does that help? Yeah. Good, good. Anything else? Please, someone's coming round.
I've got a couple of questions.
Okay.
So one was about emergency care, when a member of the public calls the police because there's someone staggering around on the road, or a young girl, or whatever, who clearly needs actually psychological support, and the police are wasting a lot of time looking after them. What's happening there?
Okay, so this is the fact that the police are sort of changing their policy, and how's that conversation with the police going? Yes. So I am not as up to date as some. I think I might defer to the chief exec on that one. There's a microphone behind you, Jane.
So this is the right care, right person.
Yeah.
That the police. So I'm actually meeting one of the senior police officers tomorrow to talk about how we can jointly approach this. So we've got our whole urgent and emergency care mental health improvement plan, which will, as a side, impact on this a bit and help. But it's important, our response to that document and that agreement nationally is done jointly with the police and in a planned way and in a gradual way, and it's not done in a knee-jerk reaction. So I'm meeting with I'm the senior responsible officer for Sussex in response to Right Care, Right Person. I was asked to take that on last week. I'm meeting with the police officer tomorrow to talk about it, and we're setting up a working group with the police and healthcare that's chaired by the ICB Chief Medical Officer and reporting into the Mental Health and Disability Board that I did. Alongside that, we have done a lot of work in the sort of acute crisis area over the last year that hopefully is having an impact on that in a day-to-day basis anyway.
Great, thank you very much. That's encouraging to hear.
And I think one of the key principles we keep talking about is the fact that people affected by mental illness are as entitled to a response from the police as anyone else. It's a question then of what we do with the situations that arise and how we work together. And it's quite a fast-moving environment at the moment, so it is something we will bring back to the Council of Governors. And so that's somewhere where possibly you could track that. You said you had two questions, so yes. Because I'm such a generous person, I'm going to invite you to ask your second question.
Thank you very much. The other one was, it was actually on an item of the agenda that wasn't covered, which is declaration of interests.
That's right.
Now, one of the purposes in a meeting like this is to raise it, is that so the directors can say, yes, I have declared all my interests. It's just a formality.
Yes.
But it is an important part.
Yes.
And I'm raising it because I have been doing due diligence on a number of public bodies, and I'm finding inconsistencies with people's declarations of interest.
Yeah.
And not only that they have multiple identities registered in Companies House. Now, that's a particular problem because that corrupts all audits or all due diligence associated to those people.
Okay. So shall I respond to that? So there are two responses to that. One, yes, I missed it as I was going through the agenda, but part of the reason I did that was because I was confident that all declarations had been declared and there hadn't been any other raised. So they are online, and you can look at them online. I would encourage you to have a look at those, and if you think there are any inconsistencies, then do bring them to our attention. But our company secretary does go through them and does check that everyone is a fit and proper person and that all things that should be declared have been declared.
Would you agree that having multiple identities in Companies House might not make you not a fit and proper person?
Well, I'm not qualified to say exactly what does and doesn't make you a fit and proper person, but I certainly think if people have got multiple identities, that's problematic. And I think it's something that certainly raises a question, even if there was no intent behind it. It should be better that people don't.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Well, in which case, and also I'm very conscious that some people are not comfortable asking questions in a big meeting like this. So you've seen Jane and Usman, Teresa and myself. So if you've got a question and this isn't your favoured environment, then do come and talk to us. We will be around for the next while. So if you've got questions you want to ask, please feel free to do that. But in the meantime, can I just thank the presenters this morning, particularly our colleagues from Home First, but also, of course, the Chief Exec and the Chief Finance Officer, and Amy, our auditor. Can I thank all the people who pulled this event together and who helped make it run so seamlessly? And can I particularly thank you all for your attendance and your interest this morning, and we really look forward to keeping the conversations going through the year. Thank you all very much indeed.